Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Have you ever thought about getting divorced? Have you ever thought about getting married? I am so happy to have Marcia Naomi Berger here to talk to you about being marriage-minded. It's very peculiar because marriage has gotten a bad rap in some ways. Many people have stopped believing in marriage because we do have such a high rate of divorce. And many people say, well, why marry? We can have sex without marriage. We can live together without marriage. And we can even these days have children without marriage. So what's the deal? Well, I am so happy to have again as my guest, Marcia Naomi Berger, the author of Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. Welcome, Marcia.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me here, Duffy.
Oh, my pleasure. You have your own story, Marcia, right? You were an adult child of a divorce. You were marriage phobic. And right. And you did that turnaround, as did your mother later in life. But do you agree with everything I said about, which basically I'm quoting you in your book about how we don't really need marriage? And I'm thinking as a woman that so many women I know will say, oh, I don't want to tell my new date that I'm interested in marriage. I don't want to scare him away. Like there's something disreputable or stigmatized about wanting to get married. What do you think?
I think that we all have a yearning to get married. I think it's human nature. I think we're in kind of a crazy time now, which I believe is a blip in history, where marriage has changed so much in the last several decades from a more of a financial arrangement. You know, think about the Jane Austen novels where all the women need to get married to maintain a middle class lifestyle. And yes, all that has changed because now a third of women out earn their husbands. So you don't need to get married for financial reasons, and you don't need to get married. Well, a lot of people getting married. I think I'm moving into why this is happening, and I think people may be confused about how to choose somebody who is likely to be a lifelong partner rather than somebody that they're infatuated with because of how they look or who they might remind us of. So there's been a lot of divorce because of people don't really know what they truly want in marriage. Not everybody, but the way marriage has changed, a lot of people are confused. And I believe that what people want now, instead of social approval, society's approval, or some kind of financial arrangement, that they want a spiritually and emotionally fulfilling relationship as well as one that's physically and materially fine.
And I love that term. I love that term, Marcia. A lifelong partner, someone to partner with in our life journey. How beautiful and wonderful is that? I will say, as a social psychologist, that we marry these days. We don't have arranged marriages, not in mainstream America. We marry for love, romantic love, and romantic love is both functional and dysfunctional, in my view. Okay, it's functional because I love the term you used in your book, because we're sexually attracted and sex is glue.
Oh,
sex, yes. Right? I love that term. Sex is glue for a couple. And Masters and Johnson talked about the erotic bond, the value of the erotic bond. And so we can't underestimate that. So that's, in my view, the function of romantic love. The dysfunction is, as you said, you marry someone who, as I'm also an imago therapist, and I know you are a social worker, LMSW, and you're a psychotherapist as well. So I'm sure you know about our imagos. We marry people subconsciously who are reminiscent of our original caregivers. And so that we can finish unfinished childhood business, we can revisit the scene of the crime and finally get from our spouse what we didn't get from our parents. And of course, that doesn't work because the very same person we're attracted to, because they are reminiscent of our parents, is the very same person who is not going to give us what we want. Mm-hmm. And Harville Hendricks, who created imago therapy, said, but it doesn't mean we have to divorce. It just means we have to make the subconscious conscious and go for it, and to ask for what we need with the full acceptance that we may not get all of it, but hopefully we get some of it. And that the goal is to stretch for our mate, not to yank ourselves out of our comfort zone, but to stretch for our mate. And each person is responsible to do that. So it has to be a mutual stretching. So I think that's a major reason for divorce, disillusionment. Yet in your book, you talk about all the ways that we can have lasting love.
Right. And I'm interested in what you said about the imago theory, because it makes a lot of sense. And it also reminds me of the repetition compulsion, which is the concept that we tend to repeat what we grew up with. And this is why it is so important that if we have a tendency to do that, that we do some corrective work, which might be psychotherapy. It might be having some good mentors and good role models. But the self-awareness is so important in order to get over whatever possible obstacles there are to a lasting, loving marriage.
Absolutely. And I taught sociology of marriage and the family for many years on the college level. And I always promulgated that women should marry about a decade later than they were historically marrying. And I was teaching many years ago, and that really has come to pass, that people are marrying later. And I think that has a lot to do with expectation management. What do you expect? And I believe you married at 40, if I recall.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
You married later in life.
Right.
And I, again, speaking as a social psychologist, the idea of women marrying young and then spending time rearing children, not having a career, and then trying to break into the market economy later in life, very, very tough. So I've always encouraged women to marry later, to establish themselves in their career. And of course, the world is so different now with the virtual workplace. Everything has turned upside down for the yay and for the nay. So tell us more of your wisdom from your book, Marcia, how we deal with all of these factors.
Well, there are these different factors, and there are so many facets to consider that this is why I wrote Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love, the way I did, which is literally an A to Z guide with over 100 different topics addressed. So whatever your question is, whatever your issue is, you're likely to find it in the book Marriage Minded. You can look in the index or the table of contents if you want to learn about how to deal with money when you're dating, how to deal with sex, if you want to, while you're dating, what to really be looking for beyond the superficial for somebody, so that you make a good choice for somebody that you are going to be able to have a lasting, loving relationship with.
Yes, and I was very intrigued by what you wrote about that, the BFF, best friends forever. So there are a couple of things here. A lot, as a psychotherapist myself, what my clients who are single, dating, will say, "Oh, I'm not attracted to that person," and I have to say, I see it a little differently than you're describing. I mean, you do say that when you first meet someone and you're not attracted, just give it a chance and just open up and establish a real dialogue, a real communication, and that sexual attraction can grow over time. I do think there is merit to that, but I will say to you that as a marital therapist, also, besides seeing singles, of course, and people come to me, obviously, just on the brink of divorce, and they're fed up with each other, and I ask them what they can say to appreciate each other, and the best they can muster is, "Well, I appreciate that you came. I appreciate that you're here." That's what they'll say, and when they ask me about, how do I see their marriage, I say, number one, there has to have been a spark initially, a reason that you really wanted each other initially, because the hate gets, and we have this love-hate relationship with our spouses often, the hate, the rage, the anger, the hurt can obscure love. So if you could remember how you felt originally, then you have a foundation to go on. And the other piece that I talk to them about, of course, is, are you both willing to stretch for your partner?
Nice. Very
Do
nice.
you really, really want this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it has to be mutual. So, I was intrigued that you said that you can have a spouse who is a best friend. And I was so wonderful for me to interview John Gray on Just Relationships. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And that whole idea of find your friends among your girlfriends, and don't expect your husband to get what you're saying, right? And you do talk about that. You do say that women are much more emotionally supportive of men. Men are not as emotionally supportive of women, so that women do need and are able to find emotional support outside the marriage. So there's so much here. What do you think?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that I don't think people should get married if they're not sexually attracted to each other.
Okay.
And when I wrote in my book that basically was give it a little chance, because on a first date, people might be nervous and not really come across as their true shining selves. So I say go out like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times. And then if there's no spark, in a reasonable amount of time, move on, and this person could be a great spouse for somebody else, but not for you.
Right. Fair enough. Then we do agree, Marcia.
Basically, oh yeah. And I can give my own life as an example, because when I met my husband, I thought he was much too young for me. I thought he was much too young, but I liked him. I liked talking with him and hanging out with him. And I wasn't, So, but he seemed to like me a lot. It took the trouble of driving for our dates, driving over an hour to see me. But by our third date, a couple of things happened. I guess I found out that he wasn't that much younger than me. And I guess I was relaxed, and anyway, it's worked out well.
But you did find him attractive.
Yeah, like a younger brother.
Oh, I see.
I'm saying when I first met him, I thought he was in his late 20s, and I was around 40.
Yes.
But he's like 4 years younger than me.
Oh,
which is fine.
Right, that's fine.
Yeah. And Yeah, I want to also comment about marrying later, if that's okay.
Oh, no.
There's definitely a trend to that. A lot of women want to get their careers together first. I somehow expected, even though I didn't realize how conflicted I was about marriage for a long time. And I dated for a long time, but I just really wasn't ready. I hadn't learned how to have the kind of relationship where you're mutually concerned about each other's needs and wants as well as your own, et cetera. So I had to mature enough to get to that place. And some people are at that place when they're 20 or 22. Not so I wouldn't make a hard and fast rule about marrying later, but I'd say when you're ready, when you're truly ready, mature enough. And you're going to still grow once you're married. As you say, like with the Imago, it's a lifelong journey. I say marriage is the ultimate growth experience, or at least it can be. And I like the way you said, if you're willing to stretch.
Yes.
Stretch.
Right. If you're willing to stretch. Well, I am really glad that we agree on this, that not to marry if you're not sexually attracted to someone, again, I just want to say that sociologically, romantic love is both functional and dysfunctional. And if we marry only for sexual attraction, then that can go awry very quickly, because when we move out of the courtship stage and we go into the commitment phase and we let our hair down and we go beyond the role playing, the saving face to the real deal underneath, then things can really, really be torturous for people. So what Harville Hendrix says is that when we're in that stage, it's called the power struggle stage, then we either sit in it and we deal with it, we face the fire, or we emotionally divorce if we don't physically divorce, but we divorce, right? We divorce. And Harville Hendrix talks about the theme of no exits. So to really not create a parallel life marriage, right, where each person it's called an empty shell marriage, but to really not use any exits and to sit in it and to stay together and to see it through. And frankly, Marcia, I have to say, as you're a therapist, I'm a therapist. So many people cannot do that without intervention.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Without third party intervention.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Because we're up against the subconscious, which is so powerful. We're looking at just about 90% of our psyche is under the surface. So we're trying to contend with a lot of things that are even unknown to us. So yeah, you address everyone in your book. You address people who are divorced, people who are widowed, obviously single people. And what do you say to what I said about so many women will not even own up? Yes, I want to get married, because they're afraid of scaring men off. Okay. And statistically, we know that men are more benefited by marriage than women are. And they because the wife takes care of them, gives them the emotional support, and actually encourages, as you say, the self-care, the medical care, which is why so many men do die earlier than women, because they believe they're not supposed to need help and they don't go for medical care when they need it. Yeah, so that if a woman doesn't benefit as much as a man getting married, how does a single woman behave? What does she disclose so as to have that balance of owning that she's marriage minded, but that she's not here to nab or grab this man for a husband tomorrow? How do you walk that line?
Yeah, I do address that in my book, Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love, because it's important to know whether the man, if you're marriage minded, it's important to know whether a man that you're going to spend some time with is marriage minded. And it is kind of a delicate balance because you don't want to scare him away. When I was dating, let me put it this way, when I was dating, back then, we didn't have much internet dating yet. We had newspaper ads and other ways of having blind dates. And those never worked out for me, although fortunately it is working out great for a lot of people. A third of the marriages lately are people who met online. However, I would have these first dates, and I hardly ever had second dates with these kind of blind dates. And I think it was because either he or I or both of us thought, oh, is this the person I'm going to marry? You know, and it's like that's too much tension.
Right.
That's just too much expectation. So I would say have a good time, enjoy yourself without expectations, but find out maybe by about the third date what this person wants out of life in a casual conversation. Not meaning, do you want to marry me? But how do you want your life to go? And if they don't mention marriage, you just drop. You say it in a way like, oh, so are you thinking in long range that you are going to want to marry? Something like that. Or I had the conversation probably on maybe around my third date with my husband, and it wasn't like any pressure whatsoever. I wasn't talking about you and me. I'm just talking in general. What kind of life do you want?
Beautiful. I like that question so much, Marcia Naomi Berger. What do you want out of life? That is fabulous, because I have believed, and I've been married myself for 40 years. So when I met my husband, at that time, internet dating was just starting, and it was like very stigmatized. If you had to go to the internet, something was wrong with you. And I did a lot of lectures to single people at that time. I was doing that because I was also single. And I would say to the women, well, since it is stigmatized for women and men don't see it that way, for men, it's just a lark. Let me just do it. You actually are better off using internet dating because you'll have many more men than women. And it's a different ratio.
Oh, interesting, huh?
Yes, it's a different ratio than when you go out to look for a man just socially. So to get past that stigma, now I don't think it's stigmatized anywhere nearly as much, if at all. And I know you had said in your book that about 1/3 of married couples today met through these dating apps.
And it's probably more now because that number was from something like 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's become so acceptable and also so successful for a lot of people when you use the necessary caution about meeting somebody that way, because we do have the downside of people who are misrepresenting themselves. So want to do your due diligence before you meet anybody. So you can actually see in person that way, and know that sometimes you have to go through a lot of names before you get the right one.
You have to kiss a lot of frogs.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes. The due diligence and the terrible aspect of people misrepresenting themselves. And as you talked about, using outdated pictures. I don't understand the logic of that. Because if you're going to meet the person and they say, oh, no, thank you, you've wasted everyone's time. It's kind of strange. But the expression, it takes a village. We don't have a village anymore. We don't have the matchmaker anymore. We don't have, the local townsfolk, the introducing. We do have that to some degree, but our society has changed so much with people not having geographical stability, moving around, not necessarily having a lifelong locale, growing up in a community where you meet people, where you know people. So the internet dating, in my view, is very, very functional. It is a digital village, and this is what we need. And I'm so glad that so many people are availing themselves about that. So, yes, and I remember when I was single and I was in that question of, well, I want to get married, but I don't want to scare a man away. So the way I looked at it and the way I put it was, is there a possibility for a future? Not a guarantee of a future, but is there some idea of you also wanting marriage down the road? So it is, I think it's kind of a tightrope, but I think that it is an important tightrope to walk. And I do know in my practice and socially of many single women who say, I'm not interested in getting married again. So I was very inspired learning about all the things you had written in your book and the idea that it is a wonderful thing to have a lifelong partner, someone who has your back. And you had written about COVID and I in my practice, so many of my single clients were so, of course, isolated and so lonely. And my husband and I were together during the whole lockdown. I mean, yes, we live in a colonial, and yes, we usually wound up on separate floors. I did my thing, and he did his thing on separate floors, and then we came together, later on in the day. So I want everyone to know that if you have enjoyed this interview, tune in next week. We are very fortunate to have Marcia Naomi Berger back, author of Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. So, Marcia, we have to say goodbye for now. I will speak to you next week. Do you have any closing words? Is there anything you want to leave people with?
Well, I can mention that if people want more information, they can go to marriagemeetings.com. And on that site, if you're interested in getting my newsletter, where I write about communication and marriage and relationships, that's there on the homepage to sign up for that for free. And you can get my books, Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. You can get it on the online stores, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and you can get it in your library if they have it or ask for it. And but the main thing to do is to read it and to take seriously what's in there and see what applies to you and what you can learn and gain on your journey.
marriagemeetings.com. Beautiful. So this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.